Okay, here we go.
Test, 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 test.
Roll music?
Let's roll it.
Welcome to the Unknown Morning Show.
It's the show where we explore radio,
Podcasting,
TV,
gear,
gearheads,
and making money with a hot mic and other stuff too.
This is the Unknown Morning Show.
I'm Mandee Montana.
And I'm Chuck McKinley. It's kind of old home week here on the Unknown Morning Show. One of my favorite people, and yours too, Mandee, right?
Absolutely, yes.
Is our good friend Bryan Houston. Hi, Bryan.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing terrific. We're doing wonderful. We're here at Mandee's Clubhouse hanging out.
It's a pretty sweet place you got
Isn't
here.
it?
I like this.
It's very nice. And
It's nicer than any radio station I ever worked in.
Well,
you know.
Especially one or two I can name.
But, and before I get to our sports radio lives years, Bryan and I worked together. We did a sports show together. I was fortunate enough to be able to work with you to be your producer on Sports Radio Live on 99.3 Talk FM from, I think, 2010 to 20.
No, it was 2011 to 2013.
Yes.
When we were all shown the door on a Friday morning.
We were
right
given
before noon.
We were given that memo. It said all producers and all talk show hosts meet at 11:30. And I went to Dave Moreland. I said, "What's this about?" He says, "I can't tell you."
Yeah, that's all you needed to know.
And I said, well, Dave, you said you never lie to me. That's permissible right now. You can lie to me, Dave. Make up a whopper. That was such
We're all going to get paid six figures.
It was a surreal morning because, you know, you attacked it like, well, we're doing the show. Because I remember
I was doing interviews.
We did interviews because we get things because I think it was high school football season because we were talking to coaches. So, you know, we had a couple interviews we were going, because in the back of my mind, it was like, well, maybe it'll be nothing. But of course it was, you know, no, we're changing it to, I think.
Power.
And they even said Mexican Top 40. Was like, what?
Yeah, it was Power 99.3. I accidentally ran across a Gmail that I had created for that station.
Yeah.
Because I was doing traffic at the time over there.
Oh, okay.
What a waste of talent.
And well, thanks.
Seriously.
Well, I think you tried to pull me on the air a
I
couple
did.
of times. And
I did.
I was still under a
She
non-compete.
did a couple shows.
Yeah, I know. I wanted her in there.
It was fun.
I'm not a sports aficionado, but I have some comments.
It's okay. You don't have to be. Many people would think I'm not.
Well,
But, you know, and I wasn't either. I mean, I can sit there and do like kind of the basics. You know, I would marvel at, you know, like you and Craig Smoke, you could sit there and break down, and definitely your son Matt, you could break down high school and college and just be, you know, doing names and stuff, and I would just be going, I don't know what they're talking about. I'll get some calls here and see what's going on. But I had a terrific time, and the best thing about it is, for me at least, working with you, is that I always like to say that doing sports talk was a combination of, you know, me being really, really excited and at times really terrified because I didn't know what I was getting into. And I believe it was the time you did, or last year working together. I'm not sure if it was the Super Bowl or the NCAAs where you came back and you had strep throat for 3 days.
We went to New Orleans for the national championship, college championship. LSU was playing and got destroyed by Alabama. It was not a good weekend.
And you came back, and Bryan comes back, and he has strep throat. And I have to do Sports Radio Live for 3 days, and I'm just like going, just
was your head exploding?
Yeah. And so I would sit there and I would plan it out as much as I could. I would have like sound bites available just for emergencies. And I'll never forget the very first time we opened the mic. Dwayne Black is doing it with me. And it was, you know, I was looking forward to it.
I remember that.
And we're starting to get going, and we're just going right into it. And first thing Black goes, "Are we on?" I go, "Yes, we are, Black. we are on the air."
It was fun.
But that was, the terrifying part of it. But I kind of held my own, and everybody survived, and no broadcasters were hurt in this. We always like to ask.
I know where the bodies are buried.
Yes. You know, and I'm always interested in how people start in radio, whether it's you have that moment when you're, you know, staring at a radio as a kid, you're like 8 years old, and you go, "This is what I want to do." Or I think I've got the story right. When you were growing up in Eunice, Louisiana, okay, your first gig. Will you tell me about it?
Okay. First of all, one of my best friends and a guy I played football with in high school, his older brother was a disc jockey on the local radio station, KEUN.
Okay.
Okay, it's 1,000-watt daytime, 250 at night, 1490.
Wow.
Okay, as in KDOC. And so my last name's Houston.
And that's your real name, by the way.
Yes, it is.
No fake, no fakery about that.
My father grew up in Frankston, Texas, about 25 miles from Tyler. So all of my dad's side of the family is from Texas. My mother grew up on the Atchafalaya River in South Louisiana in a little town called Melville. Okay. And so all of her side of the family were people who were born and raised in Louisiana or Alabama and places like that. So I was half Texas, I was half coon-ass. That made me a half-ass. Okay? So, and the half-ass is true. So anyway, because I was not a true Cajun, I didn't talk like a Cajun.
No.
Okay? Everybody else did, but I didn't, and I never did take it in. I just never bought into it. My sister did. But the older brother, who was the disc jockey, said, I think you could do this. Why don't you come in and read some news for our manager, and maybe you can work weekends or something.
And how old were you at the time?
I was 16.
Wow.
Okay. So it was the 1973.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so I go in and I read some news copy. They give me a job. As long as somebody was in the station with a license, I could work. Okay, or I could get a provisional.
Because at that time you had to have a broadcast license.
Yes, you
That's
did.
right.
And that was an ordeal also. But anyway, so I would do Saturday nights from 9 to midnight, Sunday mornings from 6 till noon, stuff like that. So by the time I got into my senior year of high school, it was more like Monday through Friday, 6 to midnight. So here's a high school kid. My girlfriend really loved me a lot. She was just thrilled with my schedule. So I was working nights, working weekends, just all of it. And then my senior year of high school, they needed somebody to open up the station on weekday mornings. And so I did mornings before I went to school.
Really?
I would go in, sign the radio station on at 5:30.
Till what, 8?
Till 8 o'clock.
Oh.
And then I was on my bicycle most of the time. So I would haul butt back to the house, clean up a little bit, and then go to school.
Wow.
So anyway, the good news was that during that time, because I had that job, I didn't have to make all these family trips up here with my mom and dad and my sister. I could stay home alone.
Oh, wow.
So
Your
what can
girlfriend
happen?
that.
Yeah. So anyway, so one of the things about that gig is on Saturday mornings, our radio station played all Cajun music. Okay. So from 6 until 7, I would, actually when I signed on every morning, I had to play Cajun music from 5:30 until 6.
Okay.
Okay. No French, don't know a word of it, don't have a clue what it means. All I know is it's supposed to have something that sounds like a washboard and an accordion in it, okay?
Okay.
And people going, hey,
There
this
we
kind
go.
of stuff. All right, so I would be playing this Cajun music, all right? And then at 7 o'clock in the morning, this gentleman named Reven Reed would be at a bar in Mamou, Louisiana, okay, doing a live remote show from 7 to 8. He would do his bit, do all of his talking and everything in this bar, and then he would pitch it back. Now let's go back to Mr. Houston for more music, okay? Right?
So you said this, but I just have to, at a bar.
At a
from
bar.
7 to 8 a.m.
Hey, listen, Mandy, 8 o'clock, they start playing live music. The Cajun
8
bands.
a.m.
8
at
a.m.
the
They
bar.
start playing Cajun music. And I'm telling you, there are old people on walkers that would just throw those canes away, start knocking down beer, and be dancing, two-stepping
awesome.
all morning long. And so,
Wow.
but for that hour, though, he'd be doing, live commercials. Refrigerator, air conditioner. And I have no clue. Now let's go back to Mr. Houston and more music. And I just put whatever on, And then at 8 o'clock in the morning, they take over, and I'd just sit there and babysit, and that basically meant keep it out of the red, because they were going to overmodulate like crazy because they were drinking beer the whole time. And so when the music would start getting going and all the people are dancing and everything, all of a sudden, Reva would be getting in there going, hey, and then just peg that meter, So that was, and then on top of that, they had another gentleman there by the name of Dewey Balfa, who was a Cajun musician.
Okay.
And they would tour the country. They would go to France. They'd go to Canada. They would do these massive tours and just sell out places playing Cajun music. Well, he would come into the station at 11 o'clock in the morning, and he and 2 or 3 of his musician friends would perform. And I'd just set up the microphones and run the board while they did that stuff. And then when they left, and then on top of that, just to make it even better, breakfast, because I played football on Friday nights.
Okay.
Badly. And so I would get done with the football game, stay out with my friends till midnight or later, go home, get 3 or 4 hours sleep, have to be at the radio station at 5 o'clock in the morning. And then the boss would come in with a 5-pound box of Boudin, fresh made Boudin from Johnson's Grocery. Awesome. Boudin and Dr. Pepper for breakfast on 4 hours of sleep is not a good recipe for the rest of your day. I'm just letting you know that. You feel that all day long.
Oh, man.
It's great when it's going down, but then, man, it's not so great the rest of the day.
You know what it sounds like, though? It sounds like it was a terrific introduction to radio.
It was.
Yeah.
I got to be on the air a lot. I got to screw up a lot. At the time I was growing up, radio was still fun. It was totally local. You got to talk between every record.
You had to deal in remote situations.
Yeah, we'd go do football games or do live shows. And we set it up with a Marty, a little wand antenna.
Oh, gosh, I
on
forgot
top.
about Marty.
Oh, my God, yes.
Yeah.
So you do all that stuff, and you basically just did everything. I mean, there were times when we'd have hurricanes, and you'd have to go to work anyway.
Yeah.
And so you'd go into the station, and we were downtown in a strip mall shopping center kind of an area, but we had a suite, and that's where the radio station was. And the some of my more reprobate coworkers could go up on the balcony and smoke dope while Freebird's playing on live out there. If anytime you knew the song, if a song was 7 minutes or longer, you knew what was going on.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Common.
Yeah.
So anyway, I did that until I was out of high school. Right before I was supposed to go to college, I had to have some surgery 2 weeks before I was supposed to start school at LSU Eunice, which was a junior college, subsidiary of LSU. While I was in the hospital, a person called me. It was a program director that worked at this radio station where my friend that got me into this business, the son of his boss called me and asked me if I would be interested in taking a job in Lafayette, Louisiana as a midday guy at their radio station, KSMB. So I couldn't go to school at the time. I had to heal, and my mom was very much in favor. Things were not great at home, and so she helped me move. And I moved to Lafayette and worked in Lafayette. I worked at that radio station for about 6 months. It was a terrible paying job, and then I got another job at KROF in Abbeville, which was 20 miles south of Lafayette. It was in an old brick building out in the middle of a field in between Lafayette and Abbeville.
Wow.
Country. Okay. Nothing else out there.
Uh-oh.
It was 96 AM. We had our own generator and our own stick, so we were the only station that would ever stay on the air when you had a hurricane.
Okay.
Okay. So, and our signal would run from Beaumont to Baton Rouge.
Oh, my.
Because you're 96 AM. You're right in the middle of the dial.
Okay.
And it was a daytime only station. We had an FM that kept us on at night. We'd simulcast during the day, and then at sundown, we'd flip it straight FM. And so I did top 40 radio there. I started originally doing nights, moved to mornings, was program director there, and ended up coming to Tyler. Long story, all that. But at Tyler, I went to work at KTBB doing mornings. I was there for 2 or 3 years. Got my first TV job doing weekends. Steve Lee was a friend of mine, the late Steve Lee.
Okay.
And they knew I loved sports, and I was always doing high school football, or I would do PA for the Tyler Junior College games and things like that. And so I got to know those guys, and Bobby Purdue and Steve Lee and them got me a job doing weekend sports. And then shortly thereafter, Steve left, and I was the sports director for a while there. And stuff goes on. That job went away. I went to Baton Rouge for about 6 months to work at a country station. I replaced Tim Brando.
Wow.
Whoa.
Brando was doing sports talk from that time. When I got there, they didn't want to do sports talk anymore, unfortunately. But I did the afternoon show, and then I would do sports. So I'd go to the LSU games on Saturday nights as soon as I got done with the scoreboard show on Saturday afternoon.
Did you work in Chattanooga too?
Did.
That's the place I remember us talking years ago where you said you would have stayed there forever, maybe?
I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved it. What happened was I was in Baton Rouge for 6 months, got an offer to come back here to be the operations manager at KDOC.
Okay.
And it had just been sold, and they were country now and all this. And about 6 months in, the folks at KLTV called me in and asked me if I'm interested in going to, they want me to go to work in Lufkin as a sports director for the TV station down there. What was happening was there was competition coming into town.
Okay.
So suddenly they wanted to beef things up. So, and one of the carrots they waved at me was they would pay for my school.
Oh.
Okay.
So I went to Stephen F. Austin. I didn't finish, but I got close.
Mm-hmm.
I got into my senior year, but I went to Stephen F. Austin, and I worked Monday through Friday, sports director. On the weekends, I'd cover Stephen F. Austin sports, and then I'd go to the Cowboy games or the Oiler games on Sundays. And eventually I got to do Lufkin High School football on the radio for the last couple of years I was there. And I was there for 6 years, too long. Thought my career was just about at a dead end. Got a job offer from WRCB in Chattanooga to be the weekend sports anchor. I had to take a $5,000 a year cut in pay.
Whoa.
But I knew if I didn't do it, I was going to die in Lufkin.
Okay.
Okay, so it was kind of like you had to invest in yourself. Okay, so I go up there. It was a great experience. I mean, they had top of the line stuff to work with. We did live shots. We had a satellite truck. I did a live shot from the outfield on opening day with the Atlanta Braves, and the manager Chuck Tanner comes over and we do an interview live. And
Awesome.
you know, we've got all the SEC football is everywhere because you're 2 hours from Knoxville, 2 hours from Nashville, 2 hours to Birmingham, 3 hours to Auburn, Georgia. So you're just surrounded by it. I was in heaven.
Okay.
Loved
like it.
And I got to be the sports director there for about a year. The weekend, they flip-flopped me and the weekend guy, so that was not a good situation. They moved me to weeknights. And then shortly there, so they're in the market for a weekend guy. Well, person that comes in to apply for the job is a guy by the name of John Fricke. John Fricke used to be a sportscaster on CNN.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
He wasn't coming there to do weekends.
No.
Okay. So I knew what that meant.
Yeah.
Oh.
So they moved me back to weekends. I had just been married to Laura. We met in Lufkin. I got engaged about 6 months into, actually about 3 months into my job there at Chattanooga. Went back to Chattanooga and didn't see her again until we got married. Except for one time when she moved. She and her dad came up in the middle of the summer to move her stuff up there into my apartment. And that's the only time I saw her. I highly recommend that to people that are engaged. Because they don't want your advice. They don't want your input. Yeah. They just want you to stay out of the way. So I did, and it was great.
Yeah.
Saved us a lot of fights.
Broadcasting spouses.
Yeah, and so anyway, at the same time that I got that blow happened, my mother-in-law got very ill with cancer, and then so we needed to get back to Tyler, and so we moved back here. I came back to 56 KETK and was evening news anchor there. I was there from 91 until the last day of 2000.
Wow.
I thought you were there for a while. That's where I remembered seeing you for the first time.
I did nights until about 96, 97. Matthew, my son, was born in May of 97. At that point, I was more than willing to give up being on the evenings, so I moved to mornings, and I did mornings for the rest of the time there. But we went through the last year we were there, we went through 3 ownership changes in about 2 years' time, and each one was worse than the next one.
Ooh.
And we had made some real strides, and we were right on KLTV's backside at that point. And then they came and kicked the legs out from us.
Was it something where they would basically, and you hear about it all the time, new ownership happens, they look at, veteran players that are making the most money, and boom, all of a sudden they're gone?
Well, in this case, it was more we'd lose good people and hire crap to follow them.
Yeah.
And then we couldn't order paper clips. We couldn't order paper for the wire machine. Stuff like it. We couldn't replace bad tape. They cut everywhere that they could. They came in. It was Sinclair Broadcasting. I hate Sinclair Broadcasting with every fiber of my being. They are the people that own Bally's.
Oh.
And they're the reason we can't see Rangers games around here.
Okay.
Or Mavericks games. Or Stars games.
Yes.
So they are Satan. They are Satan.
Wow.
Okay?
Bad people. You don't like them.
Don't like them. No, not gonna lie about it. And I told my son, when he got into the business, I said, do not go to work for X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And Sinclair was the first one on the list.
Sure.
So anyway, I left there. My mom and dad had died within 3 years of each other. Oh. I had a son that was 3 or 4 years old. I was burned out. And I said, with my dad dying, it left us a little bit of cushion, so I said,
I went in pause for the first time. Since
I went in October. I went in October of that year, and I said, I quit. When my contract's up, I'm done. And the news director was surprised by it, and I said, I'm just worn out. I'm sick of the business. I hate everything about it now. And so on the last day of 2000, that was my last day. So then I went 6 months without a job, looked for one, filled in a lot on Smoke's show in the afternoons at KTBB, and went to work at Pine Cove Christian Camp as the marketing director.
Okay.
So had no clue what I was. It was kind of a created position. I had no idea what I was doing. I had to kind of learn on the job.
But that's
probably
cool.
Terrible at it. But about a year and a half into it, KLTV calls me and asks me if I'd be interested in doing the morning show. And I said, I have zero interest in going back to work full-time in television. Well, would you be willing to just come in and do the show and leave? Absolutely.
That's
a gift.
So what was your hours like?
It started out being 6 to 7, but then it eventually moved to 5:30 to 7, and then eventually moved to 5 to 7. And so for about a year and a half, I did mornings 5 to 7.
Yeah.
And then as soon as I got done, we did some updates, did some cut-ins that were recorded. By 7:30. I was out the door, and I was at the office by 8.
Oh, that's terrific.
At Pine Cove, and then I would work a full day at Pine Cove.
Okay.
So it was really good for the income, and it was really hard on me physically. But, I did that for a while. Then things kind of went sour there. And so my old boss at KETK had just opened up CBS 19 and had been on the air about a year. Yep. And he called me and said, would you be interested in coming back? What do you want to do? Basically, he was going to let me do anything I wanted to do. And I said,
that's not a bad offer.
And I said, I don't want to do nights. I got a son I want to see once in a while. So I did mornings. And so that's what I did for the last 6 years of my career. I did the morning show. And then there was a point where to make the kind of money I wanted to make, they also had me, I came in and I'd come into the station at 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the morning. We'd do the morning show from 5 until 7. We'd do cut-ins. There'd be times when I'd have to do a weekly information show, one of these public affairs shows.
Sure.
I have to record a 30-minute show every week. Go home, sleep for a couple of hours, get a little bit of exercise, and then have to be back at the station at 2:30 and work and do the 5 o'clock show.
Oh, wow.
So, and we had phones and stuff so we could take calls and things like that.
Oh, wow.
Until somebody said S-bomb one day, and that ended that.
Yeah.
But, I love doing the morning show, and I love the co-anchors I got to work with.
Yeah, you worked with some really fun people, didn't you?
Oh, man. Listen, I don't know how we stayed on the air. I really don't. We had people riding unicycles through the newsroom to the studio. We took phone calls. We popped up stuff on the internet. I mean, we just had a blast, and it was, Carrie Bellicosa was terrific. Megan McDermott was fun, and my favorite, probably my favorite was Lisa Spooner.
Yeah.
She had, she kind of got messed around and was going to be taken off of the evening show, which is the dumbest thing I've ever seen happen. But she said, "Well, I want to do mornings then." And she and I were buddies.
Yeah.
So, and my God, we got into we would create some havoc.
Yeah.
Why did they take her off evenings? What was their rationale?
Politics. They had an opportunity to hire. This was one of the faults of the station was a lot of times if they had a chance to hire somebody from the competing station.
Okay.
That created talk and. So you get a chance to bring somebody in.
I remember this situation.
So, and all these people, I like them all, so I don't want to name names or
Sure.
like that. It was
political.
It's part of the. It's just like what happened with me with John Fricke coming in.
Yeah.
They saw an opportunity, right or wrong. That's the decision they made. You just had to kind of go with the flow. But I finally got really sick of the business and quit in 2011. And that was when the opportunity to do the talk show with you guys came up. And so those last 2 years, I did the sports talk show with you and others. And then until that ended. And then it was, okay, I'm in my mid-50s now. What am I going to do? And I don't want to go to work for another TV station. I'm done. I hate this business.
Yeah. It was fun, though. I loved Sports Radio Live.
The thing I liked about sports radio, I'm sorry I'm doing all this rambling here. But
No.
The thing I love about sports radio, it's not that crap you got to listen to on politics all day long.
Amen.
All these slanted opinions that stoke all this climate that we have now. And B, it's the closest thing to what we used to have when I was growing up in personality radio, where you could have fun.
Sure.
When you were doing music radio back in the 70s and 80s, and AM radio was still alive, and you were hearing WLS at night.
Yep.
And, WOAI out of San Antonio, and just places like these powerhouse radio stations. You were listening to big time disc jockeys just having a blast, just playing 20 records over and over and over again, but they're just killing it between songs.
Yeah.
And so that was fun to listen to, and that's kind of what I really enjoyed about it. I love sports, but I like to talk about anything.
Pop culture, current events.
Absolutely.
And
local things.
And we could, what are we watching on TV?
And so that's one of my favorite radio stations is The Ticket out of Dallas. And that's one of the reasons I love it, because it's not just sports. Yes, they're talking sports, but they're also talking about movies they saw, or what they were binge watching during COVID, or what vacation they just came back from, or what just happened at a ball game recently to them personally, talking about their kids. And I just love that. And you make that connection with your audience that you don't get the opportunity to do
in 7 seconds in between songs.
4 times an hour.
Yeah, I know. Believe me.
I mean, it's just.
I do know.
I hate it. Yeah. I hate what it's become, and I don't like the music either. I'm too old. So I don't like rap and hip hop. I'm too old, and I don't like bro country.
I'm not a fan of bro country.
I mean, so really what I've been listening to mostly, if I listen to music at all, I'll listen to the Chris Stapleton channel on XM, Sirius XM. It's great.
I bet it is.
Because he plays not only his stuff, but he'll play Black Dog by Led Zeppelin, followed by He Stopped Loving Her Today by George Jones.
Awesome.
I was about to say, I bet it's a really great mix of rock and soulful country.
Oh, and a lot of soul, a lot of Aretha Franklin, and so it's all these influences, because he's got as much of a soulful voice as anybody on the planet, and he can sing anything.
What channel is that? I haven't listened to his station.
I'll have to look at it. It's 80. I'll look it up. I'll look it up.
I've got that app.
I've got the app, so I'll tell you. But it's fantastic. I used to listen to Kenny Chesney's station quite a bit for the same reason.
Yeah.
But this one just came on, and I thought, and sometimes it's some hardcore country.
Yeah.
Old school Merle Haggard.
I love that.
Oh, yeah.
But then, like I said, you turn right around, and it's some of the most kick and rock and roll, you've heard Boston's on there. And like I said, then they'll go straight to Tammy Wynette's song.
Oh, fun. I've got to check that
It's
out.
all over the road, man.
You know, I know this is going to sound kind of like a departure from local radio.
Please.
But I've got to say, I listen to Sirius XM a lot for the same reason that you're just describing. Mm-hmm. One, the music is really well programmed on their stations, but a lot of their stations still have great personality jocks. And they're topical, they're interesting, they're funny. I have a tendency to listen to Alt Nation because we've got nothing like that here locally and probably never will.
Well, the problem I see now is that, you've got 4 companies in the whole country own all the radio stations.
Oh, totally. Yeah, that's a problem.
You could have a situation where you got, one company that owns 5 stations in the same market. And so they're fragmenting and programming, but like a classic rock station in Tyler, if it's owned by the same company, will sound exactly the same.
In Shreveport.
Excuse me. It'll sound the exact same way in Dallas, Shreveport, or wherever else you go.
They'll have the same playlist.
They'll 9 times out of 10, they'll have the same personality on the air.
You can have that. Yeah, I've done that where I've been listening to 96.1 and 98 Rocks in Shreveport, and the variance is maybe a song.
And the other problem is, for instance, classic rock. Okay, you're talking about 50 years of music.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we're playing 300 songs over and over and over again. And there's cuts out there that are massive hits that don't even see the light of day.
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
It's just frustrating. And I hate the lack of variety. I hate the homogenization of the stations, and everybody sounds the same.
Actually, you've heard locally 96, they have Walton and Johnson in the morning.
Walton, I listen to Walton Johnson out of Baton Rouge.
But all they talk about is politics. Mm-hmm. I don't like that at all. I don't like it at all.
On a music station, that is definitely not something I want to listen to.
But because,
Amen.
Yeah, I want.
I mean, if you want to listen to that fear porn, fine, go for it. But I have no interest in it. I get sick of it.
I've never been a fan, Brian, of your music station, and you say, we play your classic rock and roll hits, but in the morning time, you have a talk show. Mm-hmm. Even when they had John Boy and Billy, it got to be
Kid Craddock.
Yeah, all of them. It got to be John Boy and Billy. It seemed like he had the Carl Childers character was like 20 years old, and I'm like, dude, you've got to do something different. I mean,
Yeah, there's a line between having a talk show and having personality-driven radio,
Right.
Yeah.
like music radio. Yeah,
Right.
and you're both. I agree with both of you that all of those that you're describing have taken it too far into the world of talk radio, and there's not enough like topical conversation around the music.
I'm a firm believer in this, and I'll get argument from everybody that runs a station, whether it's radio or television. But I do believe people watch TV for the people. I believe people listen to radio for the people. Everybody's playing the same songs, so there's got to be something to differentiate you.
Brian, when you were in radio, how many times were you doing something like a remote broadcast, and somebody would come up to you and say something and ask you something specific about what you said on the air, maybe personally? You know what I mean? They listen. When we were at the ranch, when Mandee and I were there, it was not unusual where somebody would come up to her and say, ask you something about
My cats?
your cats,
George and Tammy?
Yeah, or they would say to me, how's Rosanna doing? And it's
May
just,
they both rest in peace.
But I had a deal with when I programmed, I would say, let's get some of what we are, in the mix. And, our morning guy, Don Jones, was exquisite at playing the music, getting him in there, and just, and then ramping up to Tom Perriman. I thought that's what we did really, really well as a radio station too.
Yeah. No, it's
and to get public service stuff in. Nobody does public service. I mean, it's like, what the Lost Dog Shelters is going to do. Nobody does any public service anymore. TV, radio, and that's
and that
sad.
used to be a requirement from the FCC that you had to do that stuff. I don't know where that went.
Oh, sure.
Deregulation did everything.
I think it gets buried into 5 a.m. on Sunday morning.
Probably.
I would have it to where, like our public service sheet, we would write down the dates and times. We would do all this stuff. It would go in the public file. Any promotions that we had that had any sort of public service stuff, like if we had a chili cook-off and it went, and proceeds to tickets went to
East
Food
Texas
Bank
Food
or
Bank,
whatever,
Right.
I would have all the audio pertaining to that, put it on a CD in a disc and label it, and this is your table of contents, and that would go in the public file.
Yeah, it's a shame because I think that because everything is about profit now, is just like let's if you don't let you talk more than 4 times an hour and you only say 7 seconds worth of content, you really can't screw that up. So we can find somebody to pay $1.99 an hour for that, and save some money, right?
Well, and you hear things and that.
As long as you don't sound like you're going through puberty.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't know. I've heard some that sound like they're high as a cat, like they were just,
which is
here we go.
highly likely.
But there's times I've heard
people I used to work with in radio. There were folks. One thing I will say about radio is that you've met some very interesting characters.
Amen.
I walked into the station after a football game one night in Abbeville, Louisiana, and we had a guy working nights who had really long hair, and he was your classic hippie radio guy,
Sure.
right? And I walked in and he's playing an album cut and he's got his hands up in the air and he's wiggling his fingers around. And I walked in, I said, "What in the hell are you doing?" He says, "I'm feeling the music, man." Honest to God. I said, "Okay." So, and hey, boss, would you mind co-signing from a boat loan? I don't think so.
I remember in the early days when I did radio, I mean, you had it to where, people smoked cigarettes in the control room. And along about 1980, it was like, no, we can't do this anymore because, it'll harm the computer, equipment.
And that white powder should probably go away too.
Actually, my first gig, it was never like that, but our afternoon guy would say, he would load up on a joint. He'd say, "It's the only way I can listen to Barry Manilow music."
Another great story about that Abbeville radio station.
man.
Again, it's out there in the country, okay?
Okay.
And so occasionally the other guys that I'd work with would all come out and we'd all just sit out in the parking lot after we got off the air at like 1 o'clock in the morning. And somebody would make a beer run.
Sure.
And we'd just sit out in the parking lot, drink beer, and visit for a while. And we'd take the bottles and throw them up on top of the building. So one day we're walking through the halls and there's a big wind going through, and all of a sudden you hear this chink, 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 chink. And the boss is walking around looking up at the ceiling like, "What the heck is that?"
And what did you say? I don't know.
I said, "Man, who knows? The shingles must be coming loose." I don't know.
Rats, man. It's rats.
Because now, keep in mind, I was 18, 19 years old at the time. So, you just did stuff like that back. And I'm a much more responsible human being now.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
I'm much more mature now, as you can tell from my bald spot and my white hair.
Me too. Jeez.
So what are you doing now, Bryan?
Worked for a company called CMC Neptune, went into sales, which is something I ran away from for my entire life because I had no interest in doing it, and I got talked into doing it. But the reason that it worked for me was because during that time, it's a God thing, believe me, and I believe in this. That 2 years that I did that radio show helped me to reestablish connection with a lot of high school coaches. And the service that we offer is one where we create a music platform that screens all of the music to make sure there's nothing obscene or racial slurs or suggestive lyrics, the kinds of things that drive a school administrator out of his mind. If he hears it over a PA system, it's also the kind of stuff that the parents are going to complain about. So we started doing that. We started doing it in 2013. I've been with the company now for 11 years, which is longer than any place I've ever worked in my life.
Wow.
Never been any place longer than 10 until this. But as long as they keep putting F-bombs in music, I'm going to have a living. I'll have a career.
I think you'll be fine then.
I'm
you're
good.
solid.
Listen, when Taylor Swift's putting it in her music, I know I'm safe.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's true.
Anyway, we started out with five or six high schools, and we now work with about 2,400 high schools and colleges around the country doing this. And so
it's a great product.
I'm
we've all
pleased
had
with
some
it.
sort of interaction with it over the years.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
thing that I like about it is I get to work with people that I truly do like. I've always been a sports guy. I always liked hanging around coaches.
Mm-hmm.
Some of my best friends were coaches when I was growing up doing sports on
Sure.
television.
Yeah.
One of my very best friends was the basketball coach of Stephen F. Austin at Texas State before he retired. I've had a chance. That's how I got to I'm doing Longview football now. And that was mostly because of the relationship I had with John King, the head coach. He asked me to do it. So it's been great that way. And doing this, I've now know a lot of coaches all over the state. So it's really cool keeping up with them on a personal level, but
Sure.
also watching their success and
Yeah.
and now when I see them, when I'm doing trade shows now 11 years in, these folks are friends.
Yeah.
So, and that would have not happened. So that's been a real treat. And then, so between that and watching my son on the app every day, that's pretty much what I do.
Yeah. Well, talk about Matt's career.
Well,
Or Matthew, excuse
no,
me.
that's fine. It's fine.
No, he's Matt.
He's
Is he
Matt.
Matt?
He's Matt to everybody except his mother and dad.
Okay.
Okay. We called him Matthew from day one.
Yeah.
Matthew Christopher Houston. But when he was little, first grade, I was doing Jacksonville football. And Laura and he came to a game or two at the Tomato Bowl with me. He could not have cared less. He was totally not interested. He was bored. So
Well, first grade.
exactly.
Yeah.
And didn't really know anything about the game, and he was not impressed with his dad being on the air. I can tell you that. So,
So that had no sway. Huh?
no, but so second grade, I didn't even try. Third grade, he got a hold of a Madden video game, and this kid became a football savant. He didn't just play the game. He would do all the practice drills.
Oh.
Over and over again. And the kid literally could read defenses when he was in the fourth grade.
Wow.
Learning from that stupid game. And so I asked him, I said, well, do you have any interest in coming with me to the ball games? Yeah, I think I'd like to do that. Third grade now. And so from that point on, he came with me every Friday night, man. I mean, it was like as soon as I got off the air at the TV station at 5:30, I hustled to the house, picked him up, and Friday night was our night, man. We headed
that's so cool.
We headed to the ballpark, and went to the stadium. And so every year I'd give him something to do just to kind of keep him engaged. Okay, we'll just keep the number of tackles, just something to keep him interested. But as it went on, he just every year he'd get a little bit more duty, help me spot, do this, that. And he really loved it. And then there was the fateful day, we were doing White House football, and we were at the White House Stadium. Matthew was in junior high, I think, at that point. And my co-anchor at the time,
Matthew 15, 16?
he was probably 14.
14, really?
Yeah. So my co-anchor at the time had a medical episode.
Okay.
Okay. We're in an empty stadium at White House. I've got Matthew. This guy's collapsed. His head's on the desk, and he's dang near unconscious. And so I called his mother. His mother was tied up with the Rose Festival, and she could not get away. So I'm sending Matthew running all over the campus I'm still trying to do our radio show.
Yeah.
And I'm sending him all over the place trying to find a trainer or something. And then finally, what we had to do was call the ambulance to come to the stadium, and he had to help him down to the stadium and wait with him until they could get him into the ambulance and take him to the hospital.
Oh, my.
And then from that point on, for the rest of the year, Matthew just kind of came and helped out. Well, finally, one day, that night we were doing the ball game, and I said, okay, here's the deal. You're all I got. I said, so I'm going to let you talk. Keep it brief. Don't ramble. But I know you can do this. Just don't get too wordy. Just keep it concise. So he starts talking. Chuck has his microphone open so we can hear what he's saying. And Matthew's talking at halftime doing stats or something like that. And all of a sudden you hear Chuck saying, "Are you believing this kid?"
Oh, he was awesome.
And he got this grin on his face.
I bet.
So here's the best part. We get home. My wife is laying on the couch. She never went to the ball games with us.
Did she
that was
hear
her
the ball
night.
game though?
She did. But when I walked in the house, she's laying on the couch and she looks at me. She says, "What was that?" I said,
We're doing a ball game.
"He was great."
Yeah.
And so, he was playing basketball in high school, and things happened, and he finally felt like he couldn't play for this particular coach any longer, and he quit the team right before the season started his junior year. He was crushed. He loved basketball. But at the same time, there was a debate teacher named John Keeling who was at his school that asked him to try out for debate. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, his junior year, first year in debate, he went state.
Wow.
Whoa.
State and taps. Okay.
That's impressive.
The next year, he finishes second to the person he beat out for state
Wow.
in his junior year. So it's between the two of these folks.
Okay.
Okay. But at the same time, in his junior year, he comes to me. And one of the things I had told him when he was little was that if you go into preaching, coaching, or broadcasting, I'm going to kill you. Because my best friends were coaches, people that I worked with, or my preacher. My pastor's his godfather.
Okay.
Okay. I said, they eat their young. Don't do it. Well, he comes in his junior year and he says, "Dad, I think I'd like to try that broadcasting." And I dropped my head. And so then at that point I said, "Okay, well, here's the deal then. Don't do what I did. Go into it. Go as far and as fast. You market jump, you climb, make as much money as you can. And when you decide you hate this business, you'll only be 30 years old and you can start all over again." He's 27 and he's getting real close.
Really?
Right on schedule. He went to LSU, which was his dream. It was also my nightmare because I had to come up with out-of-state tuition. But he was the senior journalism student of the year at LSU.
Oh, wow.
He immediately got a job at the CBS station in Baton Rouge as the political reporter. He graduated from college on a Saturday. His first day on the job was a Thursday when the special session started.
Oh, wow.
And they threw him on the
Amazing.
first thing he did was a live shot at noon from the state capitol.
Wow.
Never had done a live shot before in his life.
Oh.
News director asks the producer after the fact, "Has he ever done a live shot before?" She says, "Just now."
Wow.
So he did that. He when the governor's race was over, I know this is rambling again, but when the governor's race was over, he got to cover the last half of the LSU magical 2019 season where they went undefeated and won the national championship with Joe Burrow.
Yeah.
So he got the sports guys commandeered him because he's a terrific storyteller. And so he would go with them to the Alabama game. He would go with them to the SEC championship. He got to go to the playoff games, and he was on the field for the national championship. And one of the things that he got to do the week of Thanksgiving, he was supposed to come home for the week. He says, "I'm going to have to cut it a little short. I got to go to Athens, Ohio." Joe Burrow's hometown.
Oh.
Joe Burrow's on his way to a Heisman Trophy, and everybody knows it. And so
I got chills, Brian.
they sent him to Athens, Ohio, and Joe Burrow's mom and dad took him around town and introduced him to his Pop Warner coach and different people. And,
Oh, wow.
And one of the cool things is he went. This place is a very interesting town in that the University of Miami, Ohio, is in Athens. Okay. So half of the town is about the college. The other half is just dirt poor, very impoverished.
Uh-huh.
And he goes into this liquor store to talk to this basically 19 or 20-year-old clerk. I guess it's got to be 21. So 21-year-old clerk. And he was just talking to him about Joe Burrow. He says, people like that don't come from here. Mm. He ends up winning a national award for that story. He won a Murrow Award for that story. He ends up getting a job at Ken's in San Antonio. He's there for 2 years. He got there right in the middle of COVID. So he didn't even get to go into the newsroom for the first 6 months that he was at the station. But he's won 3 Murrow Awards. He's now at WFAA in Dallas. He works out of Fort Worth. And so it's a little heavy on the crime coverage, but again, every once in a while he'll get to do something fun. He got to go to the World Series. You know, he got to do some press coverage, stories about the All-Star game and things like that. So he does get to do some things that are fun once in a while. So, but I don't know that he'll stay in the business long. He would like to anchor, and he's tired of reporting.
Well, what about shifting to sports? Like try to get to ESPN or something like that.
He doesn't want to do that.
Of course, ESPN, I mean, I don't know.
He does not want to work for a cable news network, so he doesn't want to go national. Morgan Chesley, that works.
I know that name.
He's from Tyler. He worked at KLTV. Yeah. He works for NBC. This guy has no life. He's on a plane every day. He came to town, and Ryan Peterson worked with him, old buddy of ours. And Ryan tried to get together with him for lunch while he was in town. He had 20 minutes. 20 minutes. And so there's just no life. They're just on to the next thing every day. And he says, I don't want to do that. And so he's good enough. He could do it if he wanted to, but he just doesn't want to. So he wants to be an anchor and have a lot of editorial say over what goes on the newscast. He is very serious about his journalism. I mean, very serious about it.
Well, I can appreciate that. There's not enough of that.
Well, that's exactly right. and that may be one of the reasons he's going to end up getting out of it, because they don't seem to value that very much.
Well, it's like you mentioned earlier. It's become a profitable business. It's not. It is a business. The news business is a business now. It's not just about covering the news.
Well, it's entertainment now. It's not.
Right.
It's not news anymore.
Right.
And I tell people, they'll ask me, well, what? I tell them, you need to quit watching one channel for one thing.
Right.
Whatever channel that
you're getting
is.
that slant.
Yes.
Yeah.
Whichever channel it is, switch it up.
Yeah.
I said, but I'm going to tell you this much. If you're watching the 24-hour news channels, that is fear porn. That's all that is.
Well, it's not news, it's
porn.
opinions.
Well, what I tell people is if you're really going to watch that crap, watch the first 5 minutes to get the headlines, and the first time you see 4 faces on camera, turn it off.
Right.
Because you know what's getting ready to happen now. Now all they're going to do is shout each other down and argue.
Yep.
Or lie.
Or lie.
I don't
or
watch
both.
It.
Yeah, or both, yeah.
I mean, I don't watch it. I mean, I produce our 5 o'clock news at KTBB, and when I get home, my rule is I don't watch the news. Well, it's in my ear the entire day.
One of the funniest things about getting out of the business when I did and going to work at Pine Cove is that back when I was in the business, I used to believe that, everybody hung on every word and they watched every show, and, you felt pretty self-important. And then when I got out of the business, I found myself watching about one newscast a week. It's the greatest thing that ever happened to me.
Humility?
That and the fact that I also then understood that's how people watch TV news nowadays. They don't watch it all the time. So you can't just do a story and assume if you call a particular case by this name that they know what you're talking about.
Yeah, but you know what? Don't you always think it's been, this is my opinion, it's probably maybe not the greatest one, because I don't know if you ever remember this forum board called radioinfo.com. So you'd have, people getting on there railing about, and this goes like 20 years ago, railing about automation and it's replacing the disc jockey. And I've always thought this, I've thought it for a long time, that, whatever you are doing, whether it's news, whether it's music, that's what they want. If you're working at if I'm working at a classic country station, we're working together. The music's the primary product. It doesn't mean that we're not important. It just means that if programming's doing the job right, they're getting what they want, need, desire, which is classic country or...
It's the foundation piece.
But again,
play their favorite song.
Even in music radio, I've sat there. I think it was about a year ago, Thanksgiving. We were going through Dallas, and I was listening to what's the oldie station? 98.3. I cannot remember it in Dallas.
K-Love?
K-Love.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was listening to K-Love, and I heard something, and it was like, I couldn't put my finger on it. And it was a voice track, and there was a jingle tacked on, and it just seemed disjointed. I go, oh, I know what they're doing. They're having the single voice track, and it's just goes to all their other stations. Mm-hmm. So everybody just, I think that's what happens now, and so it's like on our way to Colorado to see our son and his wife and the grandkids. We were in New Mexico, and I was listening to a morning show. And the guy that was on there was maybe 25 or so, and he's doing This Day in History, and as infuriating as it was kind of refreshing because he was talking about this day in history, this happened. And normally it's like 1, 2, and blah, blah, blah. This day's history brought to you by. He went on for 5 minutes. I was screaming at the radio. I was saying, shut up. But on the other hand, it was like, okay, this kid's on there getting his learning permit. It's like Camus and Mineola, okay? Mm-hmm. I was listening last night going home, and I just switched it on, and through the static, I hear 17-year-old girl talking about something on Swap Shop, and I go, okay, because it's
there's so few entry opportunities.
It's
now.
The license to screw up and do the job.
Yeah.
That's where you cut your teeth, and they just don't have those opportunities anymore. And so you don't see it doesn't pay, and they're just not interested in anybody with real personality anymore.
Sure.
So unless you go into a top 10 market, you pretty much just you're just there to push a button, program the computer, I guess.
It was around the holidays, and Meredith Dosser and I at KTBB were talking about it was just the staff Christmas party, and she said, I think there's 17 people here, and I thought, there's probably not 17 people in the market for the rest of the radio stations together.
Maybe right.
That's just, I don't know.
It's sad.
It's fortunate. Anybody that asks me about being in radio, it's either do a podcast or whatever market you're looking at, find a family-owned individual station because, man,
that doesn't exist anymore.
Not much.
There's very few. There's 2 in our market: 1 music and 1 news.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it, right?
Yeah.
The Blaze and BB?
Yeah. And it's like my great nephew, Matthew, was talking to me, and he said, Uncle Chuck, how do I get into radio? And I said, well, you really
run
can't.
From it.
I said, you
Don't
really can't.
do it.
There's not the opportunities of, doing the, God on Sunday or, like part of my job, my first gig was doing Larry King breaks on the overnight show. There's none of that. And I said, well, Matthew, he's a gamer. And I said, develop something maybe for gaming. And I said, I can put Audacity freeware on your computer. I'll teach you how to do it. I ended up giving him one of my mics, one of those Blue Yeti ones, my very first mic, big mic. And I gave that to him. And I said, look, develop something and I'll help you.
Don't encourage him. Stop.
It's a podcast. It's a podcast.
I'm kidding.
Yeah.
It's a podcast. It's not like
you're evil. You're family. You're not supposed to destroy a human being like this.
Well, I want.
I'm joking.
No, but it's you want to be supportive. But I was also trying to say, look.
Well, it'll also show him how hard it is because people think that this is an easy thing to do. They think, oh, you just sit down and you put a mic in front of you, you just talk about something.
Yeah.
Or the same thing with music radio. And I won't name names, but I have people in my life that when I used to DJ parties, they thought, oh, you just stand there with an iPod and you play your favorite song.
Wrong.
That is not how that works.
Wrong.
That is not how
you
that
have
works.
no control over that
every
anymore.
time. It's a big decision.
Yeah, or even if you're playing like a high school dance or if you're at a wedding, it's still not really in your control because
that's
you've got to
real
be
pressure.
watching. Yes, you've got to watch the crowd and how they respond. And,
big time pressure.
Yeah, it's huge pressure, and the average person thinks that it's not valuable. They don't want to pay for it in most cases, but they also think that they can do it. And so I appreciate that you're showing Matthew like, okay, here's the mic. I'll help you develop something, but you're showing him that it's work and it's a craft and it's something that takes skill.
Yep.
And it's an art.
One of the things too that I'm seeing, because you see what newspapers have become now, because they've gone from newspapers to pamphlets,
magazines too.
Oh,
there's nothing.
But a lot of the writers now are putting their own stuff on Substack and charging for the content. Like Bob Sturm up at the Ticket, does a lot of writing, but he used to write for The Athletic. Well, they let a bunch of these people go when the New York Times took over, and basically the New York Times got rid of their sports department. And now they just use The Athletic as their sports page.
Oh, okay.
Which is crazy. New York City now, come on. You know? So Bob Sturm writes regularly about 3 or 4 times a week. He writes a big column on something, Cowboys, Stars, whatever. And it's behind a subscription. It's like $8 a month.
Do you think he makes anything off it?
Yeah, I think he does. And he can make it as long as he wants to. He's not limited by space. He can write anything he wants to write.
Okay.
And monetize it. So if you're good, you'll get people to read your stuff. And because he's got a following with the radio station, he's got. That's the other thing.
That helps.
That's the other thing too, guys. You both know this.
Oh yeah.
You always had to work more than one job in this business.
Amen.
Oh yeah.
That's all I did. I mean, I was doing the morning show. I'd fill in on the radio. I would do high school football games, do PA, for games. I mean, whatever. Just having to piece stuff together all my life.
I was doing voiceovers and mobile DJ stuff for about 20 years, and that was just let's pay the farm off. So we don't have a monthly bill on anything, but I got to where I just got burnt out on everything.
Well, I'm doing voiçover for CBS 19 now.
Oh,
yeah,
usually
nice.
just I've heard you. Yeah,
it's nice, and I'm cheap. I'll never forget when they called and asked me if I would be interested in doing it. I said, "Have you heard me?" I said, I am not the voice of God, because every TV station's got this booming Charlie Van Dyke sounded voice,
yes.
Right? I said, I'm not that guy. She said, we don't want that. So you want cheap.
Well, no.
They want a local.
So they want
Maybe so.
So you're doing the imaging, right?
Right.
Yes.
Ah, that is interesting.
So it's usually just like 4 10-second stuff. It's usually news promos or
Cool.
Things like that. And if it's too long, they speed it up, and I sound like Alvin the Chipmunk. And, I'm going. Let's not do this anymore. Let me recut it if you.
But it's a recognizable voice,
I guess.
It's kind of like when we were at Sports Radio Live at 99.3 Talk FM, and I'd kind of say, Bryan, I mean, you're TV guy. It's not like radio people where we have to talk before somebody figures out who we are. You just walk in and go, it's Bryan Houston. Boom, start selling.
It's flattering, but I also find it amazing is that I have not been on the air regularly on television since 2011. Okay. I can go into a grocery store now and still have people point at me and say, news guy.
Sure.
or Bryan Houston. Yep, that's it. I watched you all the time. I said, well, it's been a long time. I'm amazed that you even remember that, because I don't remember what I had for lunch.
And it's all.
But it's very flattering. It's very nice. But that's what I'm talking about. You make a connection with people, and I think that's important. Anybody can sit there and read news. But I always felt like some of the best advice I ever got in the business was number one, a guy that did mornings. He was a great morning guy that did mornings in Lafayette, and he was super funny. But he told me one time, he says, always be nice to everybody that you meet, because you may be the only person they ever meet that is in your industry in radio, and everything they think about radio may be coming from how you behave around them.
Absolutely.
So true.
Which I thought, that's a great piece of advice. And then the other thing was get out in the public. Get out in the public. Do remotes. Go to, if they ask you to do something, judge something, do reading, whatever. Don't turn anything down. Do everything.
Especially when I programmed, I found out, really a lot of times what listeners wanted, whether you're emailing, whether you're calling them, it's not if they had a question or a problem, they just wanted contact.
I always,
and I would always tell them the truth. I would say, I can't do this because, maybe it's something to where, I'm contractually, the station's contractually obligated. Because I would I would say, I'm never going to, I can't go against commerce. Right. Commerce wins all the time, Well,
and I always felt like, the thing that you have to do working in any market, but particularly in a town this size, is that you need to live in this town.
Yeah.
You know, you
Part
can't,
of the community.
yeah, you know, you need to go to church and know people, and you need to have friends outside of the station and get to know what other people outside of your inner circle are dealing with, you know, so that you can relate to them. I said, because it's not healthy to be just around people that you work with all the time.
Sure.
You know, you get this very myopic view of things. And I just always felt like that, you know, I wanted to be able to go sit and eat at a restaurant just like anybody else and experience things in town or go do stuff in town. And then you can talk about it, you know, instead of, you know, hey, I'm just hanging out with my friends on the weekend at my hotel room, apartment or whatever.
Or studio.
Yeah. You know, so yeah. No,
That's not what I do.
This is great though. No, but you know what I mean? It's just,
I do.
just get to know people and get outside of the broadcast, get outside of the building.
I've always thought, especially when I was younger, people will tell you the truth. This was when I was in Milwaukee, and I'd be hanging out doing MC work at bars. But you know, people get a beer in their system. They'll tell you the truth about your radio station.
Oh,
you know,
funny, you don't sound short.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Those days
I used to
would be-
always get, I thought you'd be blonde and taller. Like, I'm going to take that as a compliment.
Yeah,
I think.
that's.
I think. I got that so
Listen, I'm
many
going to tell you
times.
what.
So many times.
I felt really bad for the women that I worked with at the TV station
Oh, I
because
can
they'd get
imagine.
old ladies that would call them and critique their hair or tell them they didn't like the dress they wore.
Truly?
Yeah.
Hardcore, man,
Oh,
just
yeah.
blunt.
You remember all those times I told you I didn't want to work in TV?
Yeah.
I'm serious.
That's why.
They,
And you
In
are.
part. Well, not daily. I mean, I've done like 8 spots in the past 8 months, and like you're saying,
Yeah.
they're kind of they're throwaway. It's like newspaper print. I do
Yeah.
it one time. It airs once, maybe twice. If you're watching at that particular moment, you see it, but it's not like it's
Every day.
every day.
it's
I'm not sitting behind the desk taking criticism.
and you have social media now, and people will
Right.
say anything. I mean, they'll say stuff on social media they wouldn't dream of saying to your face.
So true.
Do you remember the story that it had to do with Australian TV? This was like maybe 5 years ago. There was a gentleman, a news anchor at a prominent Australian, you know, I don't know, Sydney, Brisbane, whatever. He wore the same outfit, shirt, tie, suit, the same for a year. Nobody said anything.
Well, it goes back to what I said earlier, though. If you're only watching a newscast once a week, you won't know the difference. Of
course.
Now, I guarantee you they'll know the difference if it's a woman.
Oh, they will. Yeah, for sure.
I used to,
For
the
sure.
late Judy Jordan used to wear these huge earrings, and every once in a while we'd be doing the news, man, one of them would fall off, slam the desk, you know.
That's hilarious.
But that's, you know, this kind of stuff you had to watch out for, you
Bryan,
know.
I gotta say thank you for being an ally. But seriously, like there's a fair amount of men that wouldn't even notice that those things go on or that it happens or they'd be part of the problem. Thank you for not being that guy.
Well, Mandy, you know, honestly, I mean, when you get right down to it, that's all I worked with most of the time
That's
was
right.
a room full of women,
That's true.
you know, which had its ups and downs.
Sure,
But,
sure.
but you know, typically, when I'd come in the morning, producer was a woman, co-anchor was a woman. Now, Scott Fossey might be in there doing weather, but several of the camera people might be women. And when you got into the business of the day, there are very few male reporters anymore because it doesn't pay anything.
I'm sorry.
I don't mean-
it doesn't pay anything for the women either. We
I
just
know,
take
but they're
it.
more willing to do it, I guess. You know,
Yes.
I don't know why.
Yeah, no, I'm not criticizing. I'm just it's true.
But it is true.
It's
and
true.
if you watch the news, you're going to see for every male reporter you see, you're going to see 5 women.
Yeah, you're right.
It's an interesting business. Now, it's gotten, I'll tell you this, it's gotten a lot more casual.
Yeah.
When you watch a TV show now, I mean, you see reporters out there in T-shirts, golf shirts, blue jeans at WFAA. Man, 20
tattoos?
years? Oh, yeah.
You need to be in
I-
a suit.
I-
Yes.
Absolutely.
there was
Tie.
Absolutely.
There was an NBC reporter, and I forgot her name now, but she was wearing a shorter shirt, and then you saw tattoos, and I thought, wow. It's just,
It's
and
I
she's
mean,
a good reporter.
Yeah, it's just, for me, it's hard to get used to because I was just used to. I remember having fights with my news director in Lufkin because he was expecting me to wear a coat and tie to go to training camp with the Dallas Cowboys.
Okay.
I said, I am not doing that. I will be the only person out there in a coat and tie. I am not wearing
And dying in the heat.
Yes, at football training camp, I am not doing that.
Well, and then back in the radio days, early on, there would be dress codes. There would be what kind of facial hair,
In radio?
Yes. Oh, I've been in situations.
Dress code.
I've been in situations like
I got
that.
sent home once because my shorts were too short. I did.
When I was at
Must have been a woman that sent you home.
It was.
Guy wouldn't do it.
No, well, the ironic thing, she had a guy tell me I needed to go home and change, which was inappropriate.
Wow. Okay.
Yes.
really
Poor judgment.
Really. It was poor judgment.
Poor judgment.
It was. I don't know if either of them remember that situation, but I remember that situation.
Well, I mean, the only thing I knew is it was golf shirts or T-shirts and blue jeans was the dress code in radio.
Yeah, typically, yeah.
Yeah. When I was at KNUE in the 90s, we had the handbook, we had dress codes, all that stuff. Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Now, if you were out in the public, you needed to be representative.
Sure.
But it was a pretty regulated place. I mean, it was, when I went to KYKX in 97, this was when they had the first radio purges. It just blew my mind because...
Is that Ed Curley's days over there?
Ed would sit there on Fridays during the summertime. He'd be walking around, shorts, T-shirt, flip-flops, and a beer in his hand. And it just blew my mind. I just was like... And it was so relaxing. It's like... you ever meet Gary Mason?
I have met him, yes.
So Gary and I became fast friends over there. When I went in 97, he taught me the start of digital editing. Mm-hmm. But I'll never forget my first ratings period over there. And I'd been used to, like, a KNUE knocking down 20 shares. And so my first book, it was a 4. And I was just so devastated. And Gary was like, and so the book's out and it's Friday and people are walking around having a beer. And Gary says to me, what's the matter, Chucklet? He called me Chucklet. And I said, explain the situation. I said, well, I had a 4 share. And he goes, well, that's okay. It's usually a 1. And I said, Gary, I'll have that beer.
Oh, man, that sounds so like Gary. He hired me.
Yeah.
He was the first person to hire me into radio.
He was a
great man.
Gary would explain things to me.
Good teacher.
And he was very good at teaching. I loved Gary.
Well, you're going to have to make this 2 parts. I'm sorry, because we're going to go on forever.
That's fine.
But one of the things that I have done, I have become over the years, thanks to social media, in some respects, I became kind of a student of the radio history of this town.
Oh.
And I'm telling you, it is fascinating the number of high quality talent that rolled through here back in the 60s.
The old K-Doc.
Yes, sir. And this was the treat of my life, was that I got to establish contact with Bill Young, who was the program director at KILT and KILT, if you're not familiar with it from the 60s, 70s, 80s, it was a radio monster in Houston. They were a dominant number 1 top 40 station. And I mean, they were high energy and it was a fun radio station to listen to all the time. And I got to communicate with him. And so we would social media exchange messages, and I would just tell him, I got a chance to visit with him. I wanted to do an interview with him, like one of these.
Yeah.
But he died. He had lung disease, and he was getting very weak. And he just said, I don't know if I said, I'd love for you to come to Tyler sometime and just walk around with me. And he was really getting old. unfortunately, that's something I'd always wished I had done. I wished I'd have done that with Tom Perryman.
Yeah.
I've gotten to know Mike Landis. Mike Landis's background was at KDOC and at
Wasn't he in Denver forever?
yeah, he was in Denver forever.
I mean, he
but
was like
started
the man,
in radio.
but
here.
wasn't he like?
Yes, he was Walter Cronkite. Up
That's
there.
what I thought.
Wow.
And just came back here to. It was funny because when he and I got this funny. The funniest story about that is that I was at the vet one day back in the 90s, and this elderly lady, is in there, and we're talking. She goes, "You're on the news, right?" I said, "Yes, ma'am." He says, "My son is a news anchor too."
Oh.
Mike Landis's mother.
Whoa.
Okay.
No.
Denver. And I didn't know who Mike Landis was at the time.
vet.
But
But
he was in Atlanta.
taking your dog
He
or
was
your
in-
cat
He was
in.
in Atlanta at the time.
Wow.
And so I just got to know that name. And then when Facebook and things came along, you could kind of message people.
Mm-hmm.
And I just introduced myself and told him, I said, "I met your mother one time," and, all this kind of stuff. And we just kind of did some exchanging. So at one point he talked about, he was asking me my opinion about coming back to Tyler and coming to work for one of the television stations. I said, "Mike, you don't want to do that." I said, "Because you're used to having everything.
Resources.
You're used to having everything and all of it being state of the art and the capabilities to do anything you want to do from anywhere you want to do it. You're used to having experienced reporters. You're not going to have any of that when you come back here. It will frustrate the crap out of you." Mm-hmm. Okay? Well, he did anyway. And he did it till he retired, and then he went to work for the PBS station over at UT Tyler until it died.
That was recent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
A couple months ago.
That's what I thought.
But he's a great guy, and man, what a talent and what a voice.
Yeah.
I mean, I could see why that guy was.
Do you think he'd sit down with us?
No doubt.
We might
If
have
you
to
do
work on
that, if you
Chuck.
do that, I want to be here.
Well,
Okay.
Yeah.
No, seriously.
I can invest in a fourth mic and boom for
Hey,
that.
I'll buy it if you need me to. I mean, there are just people. John Bass was another one.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm-
yeah.
I kick myself for not sitting down and asking him about those days when he was at I think he ended up going to work at Cliff in Dallas when it was a giant.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
listen, the roster back when I worked at KDOC in 1980, Mike Harris had a big plaque with all the names of all these famous people that had come through that radio station.
Wow.
And he put my name up there, and I went, "Dude, you just destroyed the credibility of this thing."
Stop it,
I said,
Bryan.
"Listen, man,
All right.
as Ron Stone, an old news anchor in Houston, said, I heard him say this one time. He was doing a speech. He was great news anchor in Houston. He was kind of like a Walter Cronkite down there. And he said once, I saw him speak at a convention or something, and he said, "I'm on the downhill side of a very mediocre career." That's kind of what I view my career as.
No, Bryan.
Tyler, Texas, Chattanooga. That was about it. That's why I'm so proud of Matthew. I said, well, he's already outkicked me by 5,000 miles, so I can't even give him advice anymore.
Well, I've always said, I told you back in the day, one of these days we're going to say, that's Matt Houston's dad.
Well,
It's getting there, isn't it?
It's funny because when they would write these stories announcing a new reporter coming to town in Dallas or something like that, and they would always mention Matt's father was a longtime news anchor in Tyler, Texas, and I'm going, who cares? I'm a nobody,
But
But it was cool that he had the background,
second generation
and,
stuff.
and everybody would want to say he's following in my footsteps. I'm going, that kid passed me by in the first 2 years of the business. I mean, he's already accomplished more in 6 years than I did in 30.
But he soaked up a lot of
Well,
experience and observations.
He heard a lot of complaining.
I mean, but sometimes you learn what you don't want, and it helps you figure out what you do.
That's one thing that I know it made him mad, because when he first got into the business, I was trying to give him advice.
Yeah.
And that would irritate him. And so as he moved up, though,
Yeah.
now it's just mostly, dealing with people.
Well,
Okay. I mean, it's not about
Right.
news or, I can't teach him anything about his reporting. His reporting is far better than anything I ever did. Okay. And he's a far better reporter. He's has the education for it that I didn't have. I mean, he's got a great voice. He's got a good look. I mean, I can't take credit for any of that.
Uh-huh.
Okay. He's got God-given talent. And, I mean, he's got his mother's brain, thank God, because he didn't want mine. But he just really is I'm saying this and it sounds like I'm bragging about my kid, but I would say this about him if I didn't know him. I'm always been impressed. Here's the funniest thing.
Uh-huh.
The guy that started the ticket, I'm trying to think, Mike Reiner.
Okay.
Mike Reiner created the ticket.
okay.
Recently, when we were having the Mavericks and the Stars both playing for championships,
Yep.
and the Rangers had just won the World Series, I was filling in for Bill Coates on the radio. And so what I decided to do is I wanted to reach out to people who had been in the Dallas market for a really long time, who've never seen a time like this in the 40 or 50 years they were there. So I talked to Randy Galloway on the radio
Nice.
for 20 minutes. It was
Neat.
great. He was fantastic. But I called, I emailed Mike Reiner, and he says, "Do you think anybody in Tyler even knows who I am?" I said, "Dude, there are people all over this town that have listened to the ticket forever." And then I said, my son is a reporter at WFAA. He says, "Is he Matt Houston?" I went, "What?" Whoa. I said, "He's on at 5:00 most days." He says, "I watch it every day." He's terrific. I was going, okay. I mean, Mike Reiner says you're good, you're good.
Yeah.
And knows you by name. Is he Matt Houston? I went, my gosh.
There you go.
Okay, so
Would Matt want to do something like that one day?
sports talk?
Yeah.
It's possible. I mean, he'd be great at it.
Oh, well,
yes.
Yes.
I don't.
I mean, the pressure's a little
His
bit
sound
different.
was terrific at the White House game when he was 14.
Right.
Well, the one thing that I will say is every opportunity I get, I either try to get him to call in and be on a segment of the show, or if he's in town, come do the show with me.
Well, sure.
Or if he's anywhere nearby, like sometimes
take
I have
advantage of that
I have
talent, Bryan.
football. I have football games in Dallas a lot of times. So a lot of times he'll come to the stadium and just drop in. And while he's there, I'll ask my color guy, "Do you mind if I just let him talk for a few minutes during halftime?" Because he sees stuff that neither one of us see. And I mean, he'll break down an analysis of a game, and I'm thinking, man, I'd love to work with this kid every day.
Yeah.
You know, I would love to do ball games with him every day.
Well, that's when he was on with you, during
Except he'd shove me aside and do the play-by-play and tell me, "Listen, old man, you need to go away."
No.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, I lost my train of thought.
I'm
You go right
sorry.
ahead. Like I said, I'm 66, so I lose things all the time. Train of thought, glasses, et cetera, et cetera.
I feel your pain. I'm about to turn 67, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
This has been another episode of The Unknown Morning Show.
I'm Mandee Montana.
And I'm Chuck McKinley.
This is our show to explore radio,
Podcasting.
Gear.
And the gearheads that use the gear.
and making money with a hot mic.
And other stuff in between.
We'd love for you to follow us on social media as well. Follow us on Facebook at The Unknown Morning Show and Instagram at The Unknown Morning Show. See us on YouTube at The Unknown Morning Show.
Thank you for listening to The Unknown Morning Show.
I'm Mandee Montana.
I'm Chuck McKinley. And remember, be kind and rewind.